Alright, today I'm going to talk about 5 cool rock albums from the 1990s. And we're going to start off with Houdini by Melvins. So Melvins are a heavy rock band formed in 1983 in Washington State. Noisy, sludgy rock, but they've experimented in a million different ways. And very prolific, probably over 25 full lengths by this point. And let's not even mention EPs, 7 inches, side projects, things like that. My favorite song here is probably Hooch and Going Blind, the Kiss cover. And I made a video talking about Melvins before. I didn't include this album, I forgot to. But on that one, I talked about the album Stoner Witch, which I kind of always compared with Houdini. They're, I think, back-to-back albums, both on a major label. Both have kind of iconic, illustrated, tongue-in-cheek artwork. But I do think Stoner Witch is a better album than this. But yeah, Melvin's cool band. I don't keep up with them too much anymore. Again, they're hard to keep up with, and I haven't heard of anything remarkable that's come out in the last decade. But maybe there's something out there. Definitely a band I respect, and I check out an album here and there from. Porno for Pyros, the self-titled album. This came out in 1993 on Warner Brothers. And Porno for Pyros is the band that vocalist Perry Farrell of Jane's Addiction, the band that he made after Jane's Addiction broke up. So they put out 2 albums. They put out this and then one called Good God's Urge in 1996. And they're comparable, but I prefer this one. I mean, just this album cover really brings me back to 1993. I was a kid, but I still remember this album cover. This is a pretty popular album at the time. And I still think the best song on here is the single, Pets. Next up, Supersuckers, the greatest rock and roll band in the world. So, Supersuckers are a rock band from Arizona. They formed in 1998, and the first 4 releases were put out on Sub Pop. So what this is a compilation of those 4 Sub Pop releases and just a collection of various songs. Obviously, this is also put out on Sub Pop. And these pictures kind of say it all. They definitely have a sense of humor, but it's all sex, drugs, and rock and roll vibe. Plus a kind of a tongue-in-cheek satanic thing that they had during the early days. They dropped it after the Sub Pop era. But yeah, they had this kind of humorous satanic thing going on, which they pretended was real, but no one really believed it. But their 4th album, Must Have Been High, was somewhat of a country album. And even though I'm not a country guy, I did enjoy that CD. And my favorite song on here has got to be one of the representatives from that album, Road Worn and Weary. After this, they'd go on to Koch Records for a couple independent releases. And the 5th album, Evil Powers of Rock and Roll. I've talked about that album before, I think in an Underrated Albums video I made. But that's definitely the best thing they put out. But this is a cool compilation by a very cool band. They're still around. Their newer stuff isn't quite up to what I'd hope. But again, I'll still always keep an ear open for them. Next up, Butthole Surfers, Electric Larryland. Butthole Surfers were a noisy rock band that formed in Texas in 1989. And this is their 3rd album. Or no, sorry, I think... let me take a look, actually. Well, they formed in 1981, and this came out in 1996, and it's their 2nd most recent album. So they put out something in the early 2000s, and they've been on hiatus ever since. But this was the band's flirtation with the mainstream. They had a hit single called Pepper, and from what Wikipedia tells me, this album went gold. Even though I find that hard to believe, actually. I would have guessed they sold a couple 100,000 records of this. But the earlier stuff was a bit noisier, a little bit heavier. But this was definitely a wild bunch. Just reading, quite a few rock biographies over the years, I recall quite a few crazy stories about these guys. Just a lot of substance issues, I think. But this one's okay, though. This was put out on Capitol. And finally, Galactic Cowboys, Machine Fish. Galactic Cowboys were a metal band that formed in 1989 in Texas, and this is their third album that came out on Metal Blade in 1996. And when I first heard of this, actually, there were the old Metal Massacre compilations way back in the 80s put out on Metal Blade. And I don't know if they did more than one edition. I don't really remember. But they had something around, I guess around this time, 96. It's called Metal Meister. And it was another compilation of Metal Blade bands and their new releases. And Galactic Cowboys had a song from this album on here. And at the time, I thought it was kind of goofy. But I also kind of took it on as a guilty pleasure. I kind of like that song. And I got this album more recently. A couple summers ago, I found this for a couple bucks. And you know what? I think it's a 3 out of 5. I think it's decent. And it seems like Galactic Cowboys reformed in like 2016. They put out another album and are touring a bit. But this is the only release I know from them. So that's it. 5 cool rock albums from the 90s. Thanks for watching.